And there came a company of travelers. Then they sent their water drawer. And he let down his bucket. He said, "Good news, here is a boy." And they concealed him, taking him as merchandise. And Allah was knowing of what they did. And they sold him for a reduced price. Yusuf a.s., the beloved of his father, the good-mannered, the good-natured boy, what happened? They picked him up from the well, hid him as merchandise, and they sold him for a very little price, a few dirhams. And they were concerning him of those content with little. Why? Because they wanted to sell him quickly. Imagine, the beloved of his father, thrown into a well by his jealous brothers, picked up by greedy travelers, sold for a little profit. وَقَالَ الَّذِي اشْتَرَاهُ, and the one from Egypt who bought him said to his wife, "Make his residence comfortable." This is amazing. إِنَّ مَعَ الْعُسْرِ يُسْرًا, with difficulty is ease. On the one hand, there are people who don't value you, who insult you, who don't treat you the way you deserve to be treated, who don't recognize your true worth. In their eyes, you are nothing. If they could get rid of you, they would get rid of you. But what happens? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala also sends people who value Yusuf alayhi salam. So much so that this man says, "Make his residence comfortable. Perhaps he will benefit us, or we will adopt him as a son." And thus we established Yusuf in the land, that we might teach him the interpretation of events. Yusuf was brought here for a reason. Yes, his brothers tried to harm him, but what happened? Through that process, Allah gave Yusuf a.s. something that he could not have received in the house of his father. And what was that? Ilm. Because this man who purchased him, it is said that he was the finance minister, you could say. Alright? So Yusuf a.s., from his words, it's obvious that he didn't have children of his own. So Yusuf a.s. is living in his house, not just as a servant, but he told his wife, "Treat him well. Perhaps we will adopt him as our son." So he's not just a servant, who is working all the time, but he is made as if part of the family. So with this direct exposure to finance matters of Egypt, alright, Yusuf a.s. got to learn so much. Could he have learned that at home? No. Could he have learned that while he was facing the jealousy of his brothers every day? No, he couldn't. So sometimes Allah pulls us out of situations that we like, but He pulls us out of them and He puts us in other situations. Why? Because there is something there that we can learn, that we cannot learn where we were before. So, رَضِيتُ بِاللَّهِ رَبَّا. And when Yusuf reached maturity, we gave him judgment and knowledge, and thus we reward the doers of good. The previous ayah didn't complete. And thus we established Yusuf in the land that we might teach him the interpretation of events. And Allah is predominant over his affair. But most of the people do not know. Meaning, the brothers of Yusuf in their jealousy, they wanted to harm Yusuf a.s. Isn't it? They wanted that he should receive no good. But what happened? Allah decreed that Yusuf a.s. receive good. Did Yusuf a.s. receive good? Yes, he did. So when Allah has decided something good for you, remember, no one can stop. No one can stop that. When Allah has decreed that you should benefit, no one can take that benefit away from you. So have no fear. Even if people hurt us, even if they take our freedom away, no matter what they do, they cannot prevent the khair that Allah has decreed for us. And when Yusuf reached maturity, we gave him judgment and knowledge, and thus we reward the doers of good. Knowledge and wisdom, they're described as reward over here. Knowledge is a huge blessing. It's a reward. Wisdom is a huge blessing. And she, in whose house he was, sought to seduce him. Now as things settle, and you would think that at home, where he was living, things would be good. What happens? The lady, whose slave he is, she tries to seduce him. She closed the doors and said, "Come you." He said, "I seek the refuge of Allah. Indeed, He is my master, who has made good my residence. Indeed, wrongdoers will not succeed." How could I do this wrong? Allah has blessed me so much. And master refers to the master, meaning the husband of this woman. He has been so kind to me. How can I wrong him in this way by doing evil with his wife? And she certainly determined to seduce him. And he would have inclined to her, because after all, he was a man. A young man. And a young man has desire. And if he is being approached, it's very difficult for him to refuse. So Allah says He would have inclined to her had He not seen the proof of His Lord. What was the proof of His Lord? Something, whatever it was, that made it clear to him that this is wrong. I'm not going to do this. I am not going to do this. This is haram. Even though the doors are closed. And I am not the one initiating this. I am being offered. And most probably, if I indulge in this, I won't be caught. But still realizing that no, this is haram, this is wrong. I cannot do this. This is burhan. That clarity. Because burhan is from barah, and that is when something is white, shining. So many times it happens that a person, there's a wrong opportunity in front of him and he doesn't even see that it is wrong. And he does it, he slips. And other times what happens? It's as if a person has clarity. He sees wrong as wrong. He says, no way, I cannot do this. And he stops, he controls his desire. So Yusuf a.s. was helped by Allah here. And thus it was that we should avert from him evil and immorality. Indeed, he was of our chosen servants. So when a person is sincere, when a person is striving to please Allah, then Allah also protects him. In a hadith we learned, the Prophet ﷺ said, after me, I have not left any trial more severe to men than women. Meaning that it's something that's understood. For men, this is a huge test. A huge test. But from the story, what do we see? That a woman who is much older can also fall in love with a man who is much younger. Can she not? But what do we say? Oh, this is my son. Yes, he's 3 years younger than me and he's my son. He's 10 years younger than me and oh, it's okay, no problem. No, non-mahram is non-mahram. Even if there's a difference of 10 years, 15 years, 20 years, they are non-mahram. We are all human beings. We are weak. And shaitan is with all of us also. The Prophet ﷺ said that whenever there are two people alone, man and woman who are not related, who's the third? Shaitan. So never allow yourself to be alone with a non-mahram man. Even if he's just 20 years old and you are 40 years old. Still, do not allow yourself. Because after all, you're a human being. You have a heart. You have feelings. You have desires also. We think this problem is only for the men. No. This problem is also for the women. Right? The Prophet ﷺ said that the women are like equals of men, meaning that they have similar struggles. وَاسْتَبَقَ الْبَابِ And they both raced to the door, and she tore his shirt from the back. And they found her husband at the door. She said, what is the recompense of one who intended evil for your wife, but that he be imprisoned or a painful punishment? This was love? If this was really love, why would she put the entire blame on him? Look at how she turned against him. Yusuf said, it was she who sought to seduce me. And a witness from her family testified that if his shirt is torn from the front, then she has told the truth, and he is of the liars. But if his shirt is torn from the back, then she has lied, and he is of the truthful. Meaning, he said that let's use circumstantial evidence. And what happened? So when her husband saw his shirt torn from the back, it was obvious that he was trying to run. So he is innocent. And who's guilty? The woman is guilty. Now imagine the husband. He says to his wife, indeed it is of the women's plan. Indeed your plan is great. And this is true. That when a woman tries to trap a man, it's almost impossible for him to escape. It's almost impossible for him to escape. When a woman traps a man. Yusufu a'rid an hadha. He said, Yusuf, ignore this. And he said to his wife, seek forgiveness for your sin. Apologize. Indeed, you were of the sinful. You have done something wrong. And the women in the city said, the wife of the Aziz, because this man was the Aziz. The Aziz was his title. They said, the wife of the Aziz is seeking to seduce her slave boy. He has impassioned her with love. Indeed, we see her to be in clear error. We see her to be in clear error. We see the talk that's going around. What does it show? That the woman, she tried to close all the doors. She closed the doors. غَلَّقَتِ الْأَبْوَابِ She made sure that nobody would find out. But what happened? Her husband found out. And then the people in the house found out. And then the women in the city are now talking about it. So a sin, remember, even if it's committed behind closed doors, it cannot remain hidden. It cannot remain hidden. It will be exposed. So never disobey Allah in private or in public. So when she heard of their scheming, she sent for them and prepared for them a banquet and gave each one of them a knife and said to Yusuf, come out before them. And when they saw him, they greatly admired him, and they cut their hands, because they were just staring at him and they didn't realize they were cutting their hands. And they said, perfect is Allah. This is not a man. This is none but a noble angel. You see, lowering the gaze is something that is not just for the men, it's also for the women. This is also for the women. So we should not be looking at non-mahram men straight in their eyes constantly. Even if they happen to be an Islamic scholar whose video we are watching, don't just keep staring at their face and admiring their beard and wondering why their mustache is short or long or what, right? Don't think about that. Don't keep staring at them. We have to lower our gaze also. We have to do that. So we see that these women, when they were staring at Yusuf a.s., they end up hurting themselves. And this is what happens. When we don't lower the gaze from what is unlawful, then we hurt ourselves. Now, why did this wife of Aziz come up with this plan? Because she's justifying herself. That if I have fallen in love with him, I'm not wrong. He's handsome. It's not my fault. As if she's showing them, why are you blaming me? Look at you. Even you fell in love with him. Even you admire his beauty. And this is so common, and sadly, that when we are doing something wrong, we justify it. We justify it. We say, it's so tempting. It's everywhere. It's so common. Everybody's doing it. I can't help it. Right? And the list goes on. Haram is haram, no matter how attractive it may seem. And to justify it is a greater wrong. She said, that is the one about whom you blamed me. So am I wrong? She's justifying herself. And I certainly sought to seduce him, but he firmly refused. Now she herself is saying that he was innocent. And if he will not do what I order him, he will surely be imprisoned and will be of those who are debased. He said, رَبِّ السِّجْنُ أَحَبُّ إِلَيَّ مِمَّا يَدْعُونَنِي إِلَيْهِ. He said, oh my Lord, prison is more to my liking than that to which they invite me. And if you do not avert from me their plan, I might incline toward them and thus be of the ignorant. So what is he saying? Oh Allah, send me to prison so that I can be saved from this haram. And this shows iman. That a person is willing to suffer some worldly loss in order to protect his faith. In order to preserve his faith. Just as Imam Bukhari, he had 1,000 dinar or dirham with him, and he was on a ship, and he told somebody that he had all that money, and that man, after some time he said, I've lost so much money, somebody stole it, and he made a huge scene. So everybody started searching. And this man's plan was that they'll find it with Imam Bukhari, and they will say, oh, you stole this man's wealth, return it to him. Right? The money was not found. So this man, he went to Imam Bukhari afterwards, like, so where did the money go? Where did you hide it? He said, I threw it in the water. I got rid of it. He said, I got rid of it because I didn't want to be accused of theft. Because I am someone from whom people take hadith, the words of the Prophet ﷺ, and I do not want to be accused of theft, because then they will question my integrity, my reliability. So we see over here, Yusuf a.s. is also choosing prison over this freedom. So his Lord responded to him and averted from him their plan. Indeed, He is the hearing, the knowing. How was his dua accepted? He was sent to prison. He was sent to prison. So sometimes we are taken out of a difficulty. How? By being put in a different difficulty. By being put in a different difficulty. We think when we make dua, life should become perfect. No, it will not become perfect until you step into Jannah. It will not be perfect. It's either one trial or another. So he was now out of the house where this fitna was, but now he was in prison. Then it appeared to them after they had seen the signs that Al-Aziz should surely imprison him for a time. They had the power to throw him in the prison. So they did it. They imprisoned him. And when he went in the prison, and there entered the prison with him 2 young men. One of them said, indeed, I have seen myself in a dream pressing wine. The other said, indeed, I have seen myself carrying upon my head some bread from which the birds were eating. Inform us of its interpretation. Inna naraka min al-muhsinin. Indeed, we see you of those who do ihsan. You see, the person who is truly good-natured. He's good. He wants to do good. He will do good at home. He will do good as a slave. He will do good in the prison also. We blame our circumstances. We say, oh, my family is so huge. I don't get any personal time. And there's always fights and arguments in my family. So that's why I can't speak nicely. I can't do this and this and this. And then we say, oh, I have no freedom. I have work. I get so tired. I have such long hours. I have such a busy schedule. That's why I'm so cranky. But a muhsin is muhsin, whether he is at home, in the well, as a slave, or in the prison. Because these people are saying to him, we see you as a good man. He said, you will not receive food that is provided to you, except that I will inform you of its interpretation before it comes to you. That is from what my Lord has taught me. Indeed, I have left the religion of a people who do not believe in Allah, and they in the hereafter are disbelievers. And I have followed the religion of my fathers, Ibrahim, Ishaq, and Yaqub, and it was not for us to associate anything with Allah. That is from the favor of Allah upon us, and upon the people. But most of the people are not grateful. He said, O my two companions of prison, are separate lords better or Allah? The one, the prevailing, Al-Wahid Al-Qahhar. You worship not besides Him except mere names, and you have named them, you and your forefathers, for which Allah has sent down no authority. Legislation is not but for Allah. He has commanded that you worship not except Him. That is the correct religion, but most of the people do not know. You see, this is sabr and shukr, that even in the prison he is doing da'wah. He's calling people to Allah. When things are against his wishes, still he's doing what he can do. Things are not perfect, but he's doing what he can do. He doesn't seem frustrated, he doesn't seem depressed, he doesn't seem angry and vengeful. He was innocent, and he's in prison. But how does he spend his time? With patience, with good akhlaq, and when people come to him because they trust him, what does he do? He does da'wah to them. How? Briefly, but with proofs. And what is it that he called them to? Tawheed. And this shows to us that this message of Tawheed is something that is of most importance. O two companions of prison, as for one of you, he will give drink to his master of wine, but as for the other, he will be crucified, and the birds will eat from his head. The matter has been decreed, about which you both inquire. So he told them the interpretation of their dreams. And he said to the one whom he knew would go free, mention me before your master. But shaitan made him forget the mention to his master, and Yusuf remained in prison for several years. Because the two men who came for their dreams, one of them, his interpretation was that, the interpretation that he gave him was that you will become free and you will serve wine to your master, meaning the king. So when you do that, when you go, when you're free, and when you're with the king, mention me. Meaning tell him that I'm an innocent man who's trapped in the prison. And I have no family here who will come and fight for me. So do something about me. But what happened? This man, when he left, he got so happy and lost in his world that he forgot about Yusuf a.s. So Yusuf a.s. now stayed in the prison for several more years. Now this happens also. That you do good to someone, but they don't even turn back and say a word of acknowledgement or gratitude. Because if this man was truly grateful to Yusuf a.s. for the interpretation that he gave him, he would have remembered him. And if he remembered him, he would have at least mentioned him to the king. But he didn't. It's like he asked for a favor and then he completely forgot about it. Completely overlooked it. And this happens in life. But who is a muhsin? The one who keeps doing ihsan, even if people don't remember. Now the following ayat are about the dream of the king, and then what happens as a result of that. وَقَالَ الْمَلِكُ إِنِّي أَرَى سَبْعَ بَقَرَاتٍ سِمَانٍ. And the king said, indeed, I have seen in a dream 7 fat cows being eaten by 7 that were lean, and 7 green spikes of grain and others that were dry. O eminent ones, explain to me my dream, if you should interpret dreams. We learned about Yusuf a.s. that how when he ended up in prison, 2 people came to him asking him the interpretation of their dreams. And they showed their trust in him and they said that we see you as a muhsin. And the fact is that when a person is good in their nature, in their behavior, and they are observing patience and they're grateful, then even in the most difficult circumstances, they are recognized as muhsin. Trust them. So we see that Yusuf a.s. in the prison, 2 men approached him asking him the interpretation of their dreams. And Yusuf a.s., he told them the interpretation. And one of them, the interpretation of whose dream was that he will go and serve the king. Yusuf a.s. asked him that when you go, then make sure that you mention me to your master. But what happened? That man, he completely forgot. And then what happened? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala brought about such circumstances in which the king himself needed Yusuf alayhi salam. You know, it's amazing. Each time someone does not recognize the worth of Yusuf alayhi salam, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala creates circumstances in which his worth is exposed, it is established. There were people who sold Yusuf alayhi salam for just a few dirham. And what happened? The man who purchased him, he said to his wife that perhaps we can adopt him as a child. Likewise, Yusuf alayhi salam is sent into the prison, accused of a crime that he never committed, and there are people coming there and saying that we see you as a muhsin. And now again, for the third time we see in his life that how, when Yusuf alayhi salam, he needs help, what happens? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He makes the king have a dream. When that man forgot to return the favor of Yusuf alayhi salam, he perhaps didn't give much attention. What happened? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He exposed the true worth of Yusuf alayhi salam. So the king had a dream, and this dream was also very strange. Because he sees in his dream 7 lean cows eating up 7 fat cows. And generally, it's the other way around. The one who is stronger, the one who is more powerful, they destroy the one who is weaker. But in this dream, the exact opposite was happening. So, the king wanted the interpretation, and he asked his people to give him the interpretation. Their response was, they said, it is but a mixture of false dreams, and we are not learned in the interpretation of dreams. But the one who was freed and remembered after a time said, I will inform you of its interpretation, so send me forth. The same man, now what happened? He remembered that Yusuf once upon a time gave him the interpretation of his dream. So he said, send me to the prison. I'll go and inquire about the interpretation of this dream. So he said, Yusuf, O man of truth. Yusufu ayyuha siddiq. He is known for his truthfulness. Yet where is he? In the prison. Explain to us about 7 fat cows eaten by 7 that were lean, and 7 green spikes of grain, and others that were dry, that I may return to the people. Perhaps they will know about you. Or perhaps they will know what to do about this dream. Yusuf said, you will plant for 7 years consecutively, and what you harvest, leave in its spikes, except a little from which you will eat. Then will come after that 7 difficult years, which will consume what you saved for them. 7 thin cows will consume the 7 fat ones, except a little from which you will store. Then will come after that a year in which the people will be given rain, and in which they will press olives and grapes, meaning they will press oil, they will press juice. So when this interpretation was brought to the king was astonished. وَقَالَ الْمَلِكُ ائْتُونِي بِهِ. And the king said, bring him to me. The king knew that the one who interpreted the dream for him was no ordinary man. He was someone who was a man of intelligence and a man who was wise. So the king said, just bring him to me. But when the messenger came to Yusuf, Yusuf alayhi salam said, return to your master and ask him, what is the case of the women who cut their hands? Indeed, my Lord is knowing of their plan. Yusuf alayhi salam does not rush out of the prison. And we see his patience over here, his trust in Allah over here. Generally what happens, when we are waiting for relief, when we're waiting for some blessing, as soon as we see it, we jump at it. We're waiting for iftar time, and what happens? As soon as the time tells us that we can break our fast, without even thinking, we start gobbling up food. Look at the patience of Yusuf alayhi salam. He's not hasty. Before he steps out of the prison, he wants to make sure that the people will actually trust him. He wants to establish trust. And how will that be? When his record is clear. When he's declared innocent of a crime that he was falsely accused of. Why? Because as a prophet, he had a very important role to play. As a person who was going to help people, he had to be someone who was trustworthy. He had to be someone that people felt comfortable with. So if this was a man who had been accused of playing with women, then how could people trust him? And we see that all of the prophets of Allah, what was their quality? That they were all known for their truthfulness and their trustworthiness. So Yusuf a.s. wants to make sure that he has a clear record. And we see that on the one hand, our matter is with Allah. But on the other hand, our matter is also with the people. Generally, it happens that when we are falsely accused, or when people have a wrong impression about us, we say, it's okay, I don't care about it. Why? Because Allah knows my reality. Yes, definitely, Allah knows our reality. But when we do have a chance, an opportunity to clarify our position before people, we should do so. It doesn't mean that all of the time we should be concerned about defending our image, protecting our image in front of other people. No. But when Allah does give us a chance to correct our affairs before people, then we must seize that opportunity and establish trust. Because if there is no trust between people, then there can be no long-term relationship in them. Then they cannot benefit from each other. Then no matter how much good you wish to bring to people, you cannot bring it because they're not willing to receive it. So Yusuf a.s. is very patient over here also. The king said to the women, now the king takes the matter in his own hand. Just imagine, they threw him in the prison without even proving him guilty. And now what do we see? The king is taking the matter in his own hand, establishing the innocence of Yusuf a.s. But notice, this was after several years. Several years. In the meantime, Yusuf a.s. had to be in the prison because he had to experience something over there that he wouldn't otherwise experience. He had to learn something there that he could not otherwise learn. Many times it happens that Allah also puts us through some hardship. Times of loneliness. Times when we feel like our talents, our abilities are being wasted. We are imprisoned. We are locked up. But in that also, if a person accepts the decree of Allah, there will be learning. As we see Yusuf a.s., his time in the prison didn't go waste. There was a reason why Allah kept him there. And when Allah brought him out, then we see that he is declared completely innocent. The king said to the women, what was your condition when you sought to seduce Yusuf? They said, perfect is Allah. We know about him no evil. The wife of the Aziz said, now the truth has become evident. It was I who sought to seduce him. And indeed he is of the truthful. Before she said this, in front of her friends, that he did not listen to me. And now she says this in front of the king. She publicly confesses that she was guilty and Yusuf a.s. was innocent. That is so that the Aziz will know that I did not betray him in his absence, and that Allah does not guide the plan of the betrayers. Why is that woman confessing now? To also make it clear to her husband that she did not betray him. And we can also understand these words to be the words of Yusuf a.s. That why is it that he's insisting that his innocence be revealed? To make the Aziz, his master, know that Yusuf a.s. never betrayed him. Because